the only independent news talk network in the Middle East, Israel National Radio and IsraelNationalRadio.com present the Tamar Yonah Show. Here's Tamar Yonah.
It is a beautiful day in the land of Israel today. Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here, broadcasting out of Bet El, which means the house of God, just north of Jerusalem, D.C. That's right, Jerusalem, David's capital. And I was there yesterday. I was in the old city yesterday. I was at the hotel. It was just beautiful. I have a lot to talk about, but it'll be for another show because today we have a very special show for you. And it's all about narcissism and our leaders of today, and is particularly the cult of personality president, Obama. Is he a narcissist? And we're going to be having on a very special guest today who's going to be talking about that. First, let me just tell you that at any time during the show, if you have any comments or questions and you'd like to call in, make a comment, do you agree, do you disagree, you're welcome to call in. We have toll-free numbers for all of our listeners in the United States, Canada, and Israel. That number is 1-800-270-4288, 1-800-270-4288. You can also join us in the virtual studio. The virtual studio is a chat room where you can listen to the show through there, and then you can write your comments as the show is being broadcast now. What do you think? You can read other people's comments as well. Right now in the virtual studio, we have people in here from all over the world, from the United States, Canada, Israel, Europe, Australia, all over. Hi, everybody in the virtual studio. Nice to see you all here. If you'd like to join us in the virtual studio, it's absolutely free. It's a lot of fun. Just go to our website at IsraelNationalRadio.com. In the upper right-hand corner of the page, you're going to see a link for the virtual studio. Just click on that link, follow the instructions, and within a few minutes, you'll be in the virtual studio with us. It's a lot of fun. And again, we welcome you to join us there. Now, you can only call into the show or join us in the virtual studio if you're listening to the show when it's being broadcast live. That means if it's between 7 and 8 a.m. Holy Time right here in the land of Israel, or if it's between midnight and 1 a.m. Eastern Time, or 9 to 10 p.m. Pacific Time, that means that the show is being broadcast live, and we welcome you to join us in the show. Agree, disagree, we want to hear from you. All right, with no further ado, let's get to the topic of today. Israeli psychologist Sam Vaknin is the author of the book called Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. Sam Vaknin is considered a world authority on narcissism. He's been heard to describe himself as a narcissist, and so can speak from first-hand experience when writing on this topic. Sam Vaknin believes that President Obama's body language and the way he holds himself, the way he talks, his gestures, suggests that he might have what's called NPD, or Narcissistic Personality Disorder. It's said that narcissists project a grandiose but false image of themselves. And for anyone who doesn't know the definition of a narcissist, or narcissism means an exaggerated self-admiration or exaggerated self-love. Now, some people who are thought to have suffered from NPD, or Narcissistic Personality Disorder, are people like cult leader Jim Jones, who led over 900 of his followers to commit mass suicide and even murder their own children. Also, people like David Koresh, Charles Manson, Stalin, Saddam Hussein, and Adolf Hitler. All of these people were thought to be narcissists themselves. Now, all these men had tremendous influence over their people that they ruled over, and they created a personality cult around themselves. And with their speeches that they gave, they just whipped the crowds into a mass of people into a frenzy, I guess you could say. And what does that mean for the American people and the world, if indeed, and I'm not saying he is, but if indeed the President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, is indeed a narcissist? He definitely, people have said about him, he's got a cult of personality behind him. So here to tell us more about this and to analyze it from his view is Sam Vaknin, again, the author of the book Malignant Self-Love. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you for having me, Tamar. Good morning.
Good morning to you. So, would you describe yourself as a narcissist?
I would describe myself as a narcissist, but I would not describe myself as a psychologist. I'm not.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with Narcissistic Personality Disorder twice, on 2 occasions, and this launched me on a trajectory of 15 years of studying the disorder. So I am an authority, considered widely to be an authority, but I am not a psychologist. That's an important disclaimer.
Okay, so...
Second important disclaimer is that I did not have, and I do not have access to Barack Obama. So whatever I'm about to say relies mainly on observations, interviews with him in the media, and the way other people around him who do have access to him describe interactions they have with him.
Okay. They have actually, I think it's on O'Reilly's show on Fox News, they have a woman who comes on and talks about body language. She's never met, I shouldn't say never, but often she hasn't met these people personally either, and she can diagnose them or in her own way what she thinks. So let's hear what you have to say. First, why don't you give our listeners a background of who you are. You're originally Israeli, you served in the IDF here, and why don't you give us your story so just so we know where you're coming from.
Well, I mean, as you said, correctly, I'm an Israeli. I am my academic degree is in philosophy. I served in the IDF, and then I proceeded to a career of business and economic consultancy. I served as economic consultant to quite a few governments all over the world, in Africa, Asia, Europe, especially Eastern Europe. And 15 years ago, I did time for securities fraud in an Israeli prison. Having hit rock bottom, I realized that something was wrong with me. I was diagnosed by the prison psychiatrist and by another psychologist, diagnostician. I was diagnosed with Narcissistic Personality Disorder. And as I said, it launched me on a 15 years track of studying the disorder. I read everything there is to read about the disorder. I interviewed hundreds of narcissists and literally tens of thousands of family members, friends, colleagues, neighbors. I have mailing lists and correspondence lists which encompass 30,000 members. And I've written 10 books about the disorder, not only Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, but another 9.
Wow. I
am widely cited in the scholarly literature, and so I would agree with the second premise that I'm somewhat of an authority on the issue.
Can you give out your website to our listeners who want to check it out while they're listening to the show?
Sure, it's www.narcissistic-abuse.com.
Narcissistic, again?
-abuse.com.
Abuse.com. Okay, so everyone can check that out while they're listening to the show if they like to. So you said that when you were sitting in prison here in Israel that you were at a very big low, and that's how you found out your self-discovery that perhaps you were a narcissist. But let me just ask you a question. Were you guilty of security fraud, or were you put into jail and you feel that you weren't guilty?
Well, if a typical narcissist would respond by rationalizing, inventing all kinds of narratives in which the narcissist would be victimized by this faceless global conspiracy, and this is called alloplastic defenses. Narcissists always tend to blame the universe for their misfortunes, failures, and mishaps. But in my case, being a self-aware narcissist was a bit of a contradiction in terms. Yes, I was guilty.
Well, I must be a narcissist. I love blaming people for everything that goes wrong.
That doesn't mean you're a narcissist, but it does mean that you have alloplastic defense.
All right. So let's look at Obama now. Obama came on the scene. He was very little known. He was only a senator for a couple of years, I think, and didn't have much to show in his background. He propels himself, or something propels him, to be this new beautiful person of the elite crowd. Just wants to invite him probably to every party, a cult of personality. Tell us about this man who came from obscure background. Nobody knows his background very well. He doesn't release his records, not even his birth certificate. And then he becomes the president of the United States, and people use the word Messiah, which is so strange for such a secular society to bring on a word like that. And he's just like, he's almost the son of God, I would say, as a joke.
Well, normally, one shouldn't be blamed for what one's followers are doing if one tries to discourage them. But clearly, Obama is far from trying to discourage his personality cult. This observation was recently made by a very venerable magazine, The Economist. Obama is the first thing I notice about Obama is the fact that he has magical thinking. It's the belief that his dreams, thoughts, and wishes affect reality. And the denial of the gap between Obama's fantasies and his very modest or limited real-life achievements. This discrepancy between achievements and self-perception is perhaps the first telltale sign of a narcissist. Narcissists are convinced that they are much more than the sum of what they've done in life. And Obama, as you have correctly said, has done unusually little in life. I mean, the man is, until he became president, was an underachiever in many respects. Secondly, narcissists are about theater, not about life, about appearances, not about substance. And I noticed that Obama was obsessed with public relations, with stage management, with brand management, with public events, and far less interested in substance, in proper platform, in analysis, in cogitation. He was much more interested in theater. A recent example is, for instance, the fact that the administration is going to launch a public relations campaign in the Middle East to try to sell to the populations of the Middle East the administration's ideas. So there is a confusion between theater and life, appearances and substance. Then I noticed that Obama was unusually imperturbable. Imperturbability, fearlessness, sang-froid behavior, and so on and so forth are prime signs of psychopathic narcissists. They are simply, owing to their sense of entitlement and their magical thinking, they are simply unaware of the consequences of their actions. And so they live in this fantasy world where they can do whatever they want. They are above the law. They have direct access to a grassroots level. They can circumvent organizational structures and the establishment and so on and so forth, because they are supreme, because they are good, because they represent some kind of cosmic messianic vision in which they're going to transform the entire world, obviously to conform to their self-image. Then I noticed another thing with Barack Obama is what we call pronoun density. That's a professional measure of how many times a person uses I, my, and myself in his speech. And while a normal person would use I, my, and myself something like 15 to 20% of the time, Barack Obama uses I, my, and myself, these pronouns, close to 70% of the time. Even when he's supposed to say the United States is, or we think, he usually would say, I did this, or I think. He confuses his personality with his position. He confuses the United States with himself. That's again a form of narcissistic thinking. The narcissist believes that everything and everyone around him is an extension of himself. He does not perceive people as three-dimensional entities, but sort of cardboard cutouts. He does not perceive organizations to which he belongs as stand-alone units, but as sort of a stage upon which to play, to enact the role, his role, and only his role. Another thing I notice about Obama is his false modesty. It's very common for narcissists to pretend to be modest, to pretend to be folksy. But this is done in an unctuous manner. It's false. And the true Obama was often revealed as haughty, aloof, distant, and disdainful of simple folk. You remember the comments he made about bitter folk who resort to guns in the church. And this was a prime indicator that there is a mask behind which the real person stands. And another thing, and I'll terminate the list here, it's much longer, by the way. Another thing is that Obama behaves, plays out the eternal adolescent. His choice of language, his youthful image, the fact that he demands indulgence and feels entitled to special treatment. All these are hallmarks of adolescence, actually. The man refuses to grow up. He's sort of a presidential Peter Pan. And now the Peter Pan complex, as it is colloquially called, is also a hallmark of narcissism. You must remember that narcissism is usually, or considered to be, the outcome of early life or traumatic or abusive childhood. Now, Obama's early life was decidedly chaotic, replete with traumatic and mentally bruising dislocations. a mixed race marriage, which was not common when he was born, then a divorce when he was an infant, 2 years old. Then his father sort of moved away, never saw him again before he died in a car accident. Then his mother remarried, and Obama had to relocate to Indonesia, which was a completely foreign land, with a radically foreign culture, and he was raised there by a stepfather who has sent him to a Muslim school. And then at the age of 10, he was whisked off to live with his maternal white grandparents. And he saw his mother henceforth only intermittently. This is an exceedingly, even by normal standards, this is an exceedingly chaotic, abusive, and traumatic childhood. It is absolutely inconceivable that such a childhood did not imprint itself on Barack Obama's psyche.
You would think a boy
claim that it had no effect on him is absolutely ridiculous and flies in the face of everything we know in psychology and in developmental psychology.
You would think that a child growing up like that would have the opposite, would have, how do you say, low self-esteem or something.
Well, indeed. Narcissism is a reactive formation. Narcissism is the reaction to low self-esteem. Certain types of narcissists, known as compensatory narcissists, actually use their narcissism to compensate for an embedded feeling of low self-esteem, low self-worth, or fluctuating self-worth, and the suspicion that they were never loved. And so what is narcissism? Narcissism is when the child constructs a false self. And the false self is omnipotent, which a child is not. The false self is omniscient, which a child is not. The false self is soothing. The false self absorbs all the hurts of life. And narcissism, in this sense, is a private case of multiple personality, in effect.
Wait, you're saying that someone who has narcissism is almost like someone who's got a split personality?
Well, usually multiple personality, or as we know it, dissociative identity disorder. Usually, in such cases, we have more than one personality residing in the same body, and so on and so forth. And that's not the case with Barack Obama, and that's not the case with narcissists. But narcissists come close. They are sort of a private case of dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality. They have two personalities. They have a true personality, which is stunted, which is immature, which is actually the ossified or fossilized child. And then they have a false personality, which serves them throughout life. They project the false personality. This is what you see. When you interact with a narcissist, you see his false persona. You see his mask. And this mask is omnipotent, magical, omniscient, and even omnipresent. It's very godlike. Mm-hmm. So the narcissist creates a god figure and projects it. Very soon, the narcissist gets confused and begins to believe his own confabulations, his own lies, his own invented autobiography, his own omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence, and henceforth the narcissist begins to behave as kind of tyrannical god.
We're speaking with Sam Vaknin. He's the author of the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and we're talking about the possibility that the President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama, is a narcissist. So do you think that perhaps we got glimpses of his immature self when he took the Air Force One and flew right over, New York City and scared everybody, or when he took his wife out to Broadway dinner and play when the rest of the country is going through terrible financial crisis and he's living like in animal farms? Some animals are more equal than other animals?
Well, yes, narcissists are very insensitive to social cues, to circumstances, to other people's plight, because they miss empathy. They lack empathy. And empathy is the only tool we have, the only instrument we have to relate to our fellow beings. That's the only way we can put ourselves in other people's shoes. And he's incapable of that. But there are much, much worse and much more frightening signs. For instance, the fact that he flip-flops on his alleged ideals or ostensible opinions and views. He shifts positions facilely, expediently. He misrepresents facts subtly and openly. He's an opportunist, and he does not admit that he's an opportunist.
Can you give an example?
Sorry?
Can you give an example of how he's flip-flopped?
Well, numerous examples, starting with Guantanamo, campaign finance, redistricting. I mean, name it. There's if you compile a list, you'll end up with literally hundreds of campaign promises broken, and they are broken in a matter-of-fact, expedient, opportunistic manner with no apology, no explanation, no nothing.
Well, doesn't every politician do that?
Barack Obama has maligned George Bush throughout the campaign and has become a Bush imitator, a Bush proxy, by adopting most of Bush's decisions. Another thing which is very, very worrisome is that narcissists live in fantasy world. Because they believe they're omnipotent and omniscient and so on and so forth, they live in fantasy world. They can't tell fantasy apart from reality. And we see, for instance, the Barack Obama taking on a panoply, a spectrum of problems which would have perplexed and baffled someone like Roosevelt or much more capable presidents. And he has taken them on simultaneously. So he's tackling healthcare and the economy and Iran and North Korea and Russia and everything within the first 200 days of his administration. That is an unrealistic estimate of his own powers, of his own capacities and capabilities, and it will probably end badly.
But he's succeeding. He's getting bills passed right and left in a very speedy way. Things that are going to change the face of the American people, of how the government runs. He's turning America into a more socialist state. He's doing it very quickly. He's succeeding. What do you say about that?
When we say that passing laws is a success, we confuse theater with reality, appearances with substance. Passing laws has little to do with reality. The real questions are whether the economy can and does improve, whether healthcare reform will be implemented in the terrain, whether Iran listens to what he has to say, whether butchers and dictators all around the world have changed their course and have changed their attitude owing to his so-called peace gestures and so on and so forth. In reality, he has been hitherto a complete failure. On the theater stage of passing laws, grandstanding, and making statements, he is excellent because he is a narcissist. All right, and narcissists are very good with theater.
We have to stop there. We're going to take a break, but we're going to be right back. We're speaking with Sam Vaknin, the author of the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. Is Barack Hussein Obama a narcissist? That's the question. You're welcome to call in. Agree, disagree. 1-800-270-4288. We'll be right back.
Here's Tamar Yonah.
All right, we're speaking with Sam Vaknin. He's the author of the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. If you go to Amazon.com and look for his book there, you're going to see people leaving comments of, this is the Bible of narcissism. And people who are narcissists are not only big leaders like Barack Hussein Obama, if indeed he is, Jim Jones, Adolf Hitler, Stalin, Saddam Hussein, but also people who stalk you, people who are very controlling personalities, maybe that you're married to that person, but people who are over the line, just really people who can disturb your life. And we'll take your calls if you have any questions about people who are stalking you, or people who you believe may be narcissists and what that means. Are they dangerous? All these questions we'll try to answer here with our guest, Sam Vaknin. 1-800-270-4288 is number to call in. Welcome back to the show, Sam.
Thank you. I'm still here.
All right. So if indeed Barack Hussein Obama is a narcissist, what does this mean to the American people? Should they be frightened? What could happen?
Well, yes, they should be frightened. I'm not sure I would go as far as comparing Barack Obama to Jones or to Hitler or to Stalin, mainly because he operates within a different culture, with different structures, with checks and balances, and so on and so forth. I don't think it'll come to that. But he's liable, if he's a narcissist, he's liable to inflict serious damage on the American people, on its well-being and welfare, and on the long-term prospects of the United States. This is because narcissists can act only for so long. They finally erupt. Faced with criticism, with disagreement, with obstacles, they have a very low frustration level, so they finally erupt. And since they make no distinction between themselves and the environment in which they operate, they regard everyone as extensions of themselves, they regard everything as instruments of gratification. Since they make no distinctions, when they go down, they pull everyone together with them. And they are very self-destructive and self-defeating. And ultimately, the narcissistic leader pays the price, but so does everyone around him. So it starts with a personality cult, which has all the hallmarks of an institutional religion. It has priesthood, rites, rituals, temples, worship, catechism, mythology, and the leader is a saint. And then the leader expects ever-increasing adulation, ever-increasing kowtowing, ever-increasing obsequiousness. And when this fails, they become enraged, they lose control, they escalate the theatrical and public relation and spectacle elements of their rule. And when this doesn't work, then they become nihilistic, and they lash out at certain population groups, at other countries, at the establishment, whatever it is, at their own followers, and so on. So they're very. Each one of them ends with a Götterdämmerung, with a Valhalla type exit, and it always ends badly.
It's fascinating what you're saying. I never said that he was like Hitler, but in personality, it's very interesting, the similarities where you remember any movies that we've seen about Hitler, how he would lash out at his people, and was the same type of personality, but not the same person. I'm not at all saying that he's a Hitler, God forbid. All right, let's go to some calls. 1-800-270-4288 is the number to call in. Let's go to Ephraim from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi there, Ephraim. What's your comment or question for Sam Vaknin?
Hi, Tamar. The question I have for Dr. Sam is that, when one thinks of Obama, it looks like he's calling the shots, but in the position of the president, it's almost like his rise up to this position was he's a puppet that's basically led by strings and different type of influences and favors that he is continually compelled to do. And if someone has this type of narcissistic personality where they believe themselves to be a leader, at what point does this all implode because really are just someone's puppet or a multitude of people's puppet?
Interesting question. Sam?
Well, narcissists are very pragmatic in the pursuit of their own self-aggrandizement and the achievement of the cosmic, messianic, magical image they have of themselves and of their role in the universe. They are very adept and very good at striking alliances, at compromising, at even acting obsequious or even acting compliant, at maintaining a certain type of discipline, and so on. Narcissistic leaders in history have risen to their positions only through such processes of compromise, alliances, and accepting the fact that their power is limited. However, when they reach the pinnacle, the picture begins to change. At first, gradually. At first, the narcissist still projects an image of peacefulness, amicability, bipartisanship, willingness to work with others, and so on and so forth. But this gradually gets eroded as the main elements of the narcissist self-image are challenged, or compromised, or restricted, or restrained by external constraints. Narcissists are very bad, once they have reached the pinnacle, at accepting the fact that they are only a nut or a bolt or a gear in a much larger machine. They think that the machine is there merely to help them accomplish an egocentric world, a world in which they feel caters to their grandiose, inflated, fantastic self-image. So there are two phases in a narcissist's rise to power. The phase in which a narcissist needs others and acts, simply a thespian phase, a phase where the narcissist is an actor. The narcissist acts modest, acts pragmatic, acts open to ideas and suggestions, acts collaborative, acts. But the acting is over once the narcissist has reached his goal. And there is where the friction starts. Criticism, disagreement, constraints, things don't go as well as he imagined, unrealistic timetables, an unrealistic agenda, frustrations, and the narcissist enters something called frustration-aggression cycle. You're liable to see this very soon with Obama, if I'm right, if he is a narcissist. Very soon. Sooner than you imagine.
Let's go to another caller. We have joining us Kay from Minnesota. Hi there, Kay. What's your comment or question for Sam Vaknin?
Yes, good evening. If Obama is a narcissist, what about some of the people around him, like, unfortunately, the Jew Rahm Emanuel and his brother, who are the brothers in charge of the health, so-called, what seems to be a death care plan? What about those people? And also, that was the first part. And the second part is, if a person thinks that they have problems with narcissism, how do they change, and what is the most helpful? Torah, counseling, teacher, and so on.
Okay, Sam?
I'll start with the second part of the question because it's the easiest. Narcissists cannot and do not change. Period. Psychotherapy, talk therapy, and certain medications for certain issues can modify the narcissist's behavior to a certain extent, can teach the narcissist how to better adapt to certain social circumstances, or, put differently, how to act better. But narcissism is an ingrained, all-pervasive, ubiquitous personality disorder. The entire personality of the narcissist is cancerous and malignant. There's nothing to do about it. You can't do a personality transplant. It's unrealistic. So what therapists concentrate upon is trying to teach the narcissist how to sort of polish himself, how to cut off the rough edges, how to get along with people, how to modify his more egregious behaviors, how to be less obsessive-compulsive, and so on and so forth. These are minor modifications. Essentially, the narcissist always stays the same. So the answer to the second part is very easy. Narcissists do not change.
Okay, and the first part, you said the Jew, Rahm Emanuel, and other people that surround him. What about them?
Yeah, they are typical acolytes of narcissists. Narcissists always create the equivalent of personality cults, and they attract two types of people: devotees or people who truly believe in the narcissist's mission, in the narcissist's greatness, in the narcissist's ability to lead, in the narcissist's superior knowledge, omniscience, and omnipotence. This is one type of people. They are typical cultees. They are the type of people who join cults. And the second type of people, the much more dangerous people, are the people who see through the narcissist and understand and learn how to manipulate the narcissist, for instance, by giving the narcissist adulation and attention, what we call narcissistic supply. And these people surround the narcissist. They are opportunists. They are self-advancers. They cater to their careers. They accumulate power. They self-enrich, and so on and so forth, riding on the narcissist's coattails and manipulating the narcissist. I am not sure these court Jews, Emmanuel and Axelrod and the others, I'm not sure to which of the two groups they belong. It's too early to tell. I suspect that they belong to the second group.
All right. Again, 1-800-270-4288 is the number to call in if you have any comments or questions for Sam Vaknin. Again, he's the author of the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and he believes that Barack Hussein Obama, by his body language, by his gestures, by his acting, is indeed a narcissist, and many leaders in history have been. And what does that mean? 1-800-270-4288. Sam, Eddie from California is asking, in your opinion, what does Obama, with his narcissistic personality, mean to Israel? How do you think Obama's narcissism can affect his policy toward Israel?
It depends to a large extent on Israel. If Israel accepts the dictates, Obama's dictates, and narcissists never truly negotiate, they never truly compromise, they never truly listen to the other party because they lack empathy, they lack the ability to sympathize, to put themselves in other people's shoes, to listen to them, they have no insight into what it means to be the other. So if Israel complies with Obama's dictates and Obama's cosmic plan and Obama's vision of the Middle East and Obama's imposed structures and the Obama way of doing things, everything will be fine and dandy, and Obama will be Israel's greatest friend. However, God forbid, if Israel resists, rejects, criticizes, and disagrees with any of Obama's dictates, any of Obama's edicts and decrees, he will turn into a mortal enemy. Narcissists go through cycles that are known as idealization and evaluation cycles. Either you're with them or against them. This is a black and white view of the world. And if you are with them, then they are best friends. They are all over you. They're very helpful. They commiserate with you. They pretend to be your best buddies. But if you're against them, then you are totally against them, and they are your enemies. The thing is this: you don't need to disagree. Israel doesn't need to disagree with Obama on a major issue. Even a minor disagreement, even a hint of criticism, even a request to take some time to consider something would be perceived by Obama as a personal slight, and he would react very emotionally, and he would cast Israel in the role of the demon or the enemy. That's how narcissists operate. So it's very dangerous, not only when it comes to Israel, but when it comes to anyone who might cross the path of this narcissistic leader.
It's very interesting. I am not saying this, but there are some people who believe that Barack Obama is, some people, a lot of Christians believe he's the Antichrist, but there are some people that believe that Barack Hussein Obama is Gog from the story of Gog and Magog in the Bible. And if so, what you're saying describes Gog at least. Gog must be a narcissist because he's supposed to come to Israel with troops from all over the world to come against Israel because he wants to divide Jerusalem and split things, and Israel's not going to agree with it, and he's going to invade, and he's going to get everybody killed. He's going to die here, and all the soldiers that he brings here are supposed to die too. Very interesting if you're going in that route, if someone wants to go in that route. Menachem from Bet El is asking, what about the teleprompter and a need to always look great? Does that have anything to do with, would a narcissist need a teleprompter? Would he be so confident that he wouldn't want anyone to write his speeches, and would we just go, off the cuff with it?
Well, narcissists gravitate towards certain professions. We have probably clusters of narcissists in show business, in politics, in law enforcement, among the medical professions, and so on. Wherever narcissists can obtain narcissistic supply, which is attention, adulation, admiration, and so on and so forth, we're likely to find them. So there is a propensity for narcissism among politicians. That's pretty understandable. And so narcissists have an image of themselves, have a perception of themselves, their role, their traits, the way other people serve them and cater to their needs, wishes, priorities, and privileges, and so on and so forth. Yet they also understand that to create a true personality cult, to project this self-perception and self-image and give it some objective dimension, they need to manipulate the people around them. Narcissists are highly manipulative. Because they're highly manipulative, they are also vulnerable to manipulation, by the way. It's sort of the gullibility that comes with the belief that you can manipulate anyone. So one of the modes of manipulation is customized, tailored, polished, highly managed image. And the vast majority of narcissists have this public personality, which they micromanage, they take great care of, they never deviate from scripts and scenarios, and Obama is one of those. There are other narcissists, you're right, there are other narcissists whose belief in their own omnipotence and omniscience is such that they allow themselves to improvise. So we have these two types of narcissists. We have the controlled narcissist, the control freak, the micromanager, the narcissist who is essentially, whose sense of self-worth is fluctuating and lacks self-esteem and self-confidence, as Tamar has said at the beginning, and that's probably Obama, what we call a compensatory narcissist. And then we have the other type of narcissist, known as the classic narcissist, whose belief in his own capacities, unlimited, divine, godlike capacities, are such that he doesn't need advisors. He doesn't need teleprompters. He knows whatever he does is going to be perfect. He's going to be brilliant. He's going to be incomparable. And so we have these two types, and Obama belongs to the first.
Zev from Jerusalem is asking if you have not already dealt with that. Do you believe that, or do these people who are narcissists, do they believe that they are infallible?
Yes. Narcissists believe in their own, as I said, infallibility, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence, and so on. They are, think divine. Narcissists believe that they are divine. It's not something cognitive. It's not the narcissist sits at the evening facing the mirror and says, hey, look at me, don't I look divine? It's not something, it's not the result of cold, calculated analysis. It's a conviction, it's firm, it's on the cellular level. The narcissist has this false self that takes over the narcissist's true self. The narcissist is a result of body snatching. Narcissist has been replaced by some alien emanation, which is a reaction to early childhood trauma and abuse. The child, faced with such harrowing circumstances, invents another person. And that person is everything the child is not. That person, that false person, is not helpless, for instance. And that false personality gradually takes over in a cancerous process, takes over the original personality. And so the narcissist is a shell. Is a shell, is an apparition, an emanation. And it's very easy for the narcissist to get confused because the narcissist, the person that used to exist vanishes. And what's left is this godlike figure. And therefore infallible, therefore brilliant, therefore perfect, therefore omnipotent, omniscient, etc.
All right, so if you're correct, we only have about a minute left of the show, so we have to sum this up quickly. But if you're correct in your assessment that you believe that he's a narcissist, what now? What should the American people and what should the world be doing? He holds the highest office in the world. He's got a lot of power. There's a cult of personality on this man. So what should people do?
What is there to do? The man has been duly elected. By the way, the vast majority of narcissistic and psychopathic leaders in history have been duly elected. They have risen to power through the democratic process. It's a fallibility and a failure of the democratic process that such people can so easily manipulate entire populations and rise to power. Even Adolf Hitler, to which I'm not comparing Obama, I repeat, even Adolf Hitler rose to power in two elections, duly democratic elections. So what is there to do? The only thing is to realize who is Barack Obama as far as his personality goes, and to put in place checks and balances to try to mitigate, to try to limit, and if possible to try to reverse certain of the decisions he's making, certain powers that he will arrogate to himself in due time, certain of his more arrogant, fantastic, and grandiose delusions about the unrealistic agenda that is putting forth, certain of the frictions that are bound to arise between the United States and numerous nations, Israel included. So either a grassroots movement or some group in the establishment need to realize that this person is absolutely dangerous. Narcissism is a form of idolatry. The narcissist is, as I said, a godhead figure. The cult of narcissism is a kind of religion. Even judging by, even if we adopt only the element of separation in church and state, the American people or the American establishment must do something to contain this new religion before it takes over the United States and consumes it in a hailstorm of fire and destruction.
Well, we have to stop now. We've come to the end of the show. I want to thank you very much, Sam Vaknin, for being with us and giving us what you believe could very well be. We've had a lot of leaders who were narcissists in history, and I hope that he's not. I hope that he does good for the American people.
Yeah, so do I.
We all do, right? Let's pray that everything will be well. Thanks for joining us again. Sam Vaknin is our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sam. His book, Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. If you have somebody who's being stalked or controlling spouse, you might want to get this book. Go to Amazon.com. Read what they say about it. Very, very interesting. Thanks again to my guest, Sam Vaknin, for being with us.
Thank you.